Brian Bolster is a managing director with Goldman Sachs. He is also the CEO of the Renewable Energy Group. It's a pleasure to welcome you, Brian.
Thank you.
It's a hot topic. I think if you go back to the last 5-6 years and going forward another 2 decades, people will still be talking about energy sector. Since you combine the evolving and the hot energy sector and investment banking, who better than you to ask this? Where is the money in this?
Well, that's a good question. I think we're in about 10 years we'll actually know. It's interesting. We look at this as an analogy to the tech boom that you saw probably back that started to really take blossom in 2000, 2001, 2002. We saw a series of companies come public, but that started 10 years before. I think we're in that 10 years before phase right now. We're trying to sort out who are going to be the winners, who are going to be the losers, what technologies are going to be important. And so I think we're in the very early days of what is going to be a multi-decade evolution and revolution in a number of different ways. So I think today people are very focused on renewable chemicals, renewable fuels, and those are focused, but ultimately we talk tonight on the panel about fuel cells and the chance for that. So I think the reality is there is no one idea that I think changes the world, because the energy infrastructure, as you talked about, is so complex. I think we're going to need, there's going to be multiple answers to this problem, and so we continue to look at all different changes: wind, solar, fuel cells, energy efficiency. It's going to be a combination of that's going to change and reshape the energy infrastructure.
It's important also for the audience to understand that you have helped in acquisitions and sales of companies from 100 million all the way to $8+ billion. But these are traditional firms who have done a lot of work in energy sector. But we talk about renewable energy and the fuel cell technology or solar. There is still, I think, a gap between research and development and taking the product to the market. So is there something wrong with the go-to-market strategy, or you think the product is not ready yet? Where do you see gaps?
I think that the markets, the capital markets, are willing to take some risk, and I think that the interesting thing about clean technology is you're adding sometimes you're adding two risks. One is an adoption risk. Will people use this product? Will there be demand for it? And the other is technology risk. Will it work? So if maybe people adopt it. The companies who have very difficult times are ones that have both technology risk and adoption risk. I think the companies that have found their way to market are those that are able to get rid of one of those two risks. So the markets are willing to take some technology risk if the market is very big, if it works. So I'm making a very big bet, but if it works, I'm not going to be $1 billion company, I'm going to be a $20 billion company. And so if you have a technology bet, you need to be addressing very large markets. And that's why I think we've seen people look at a number of the fuels and other markets. If you have an adoption risk, I think the issue that we're seeing is that people want to come to market very early before they've been able to prove that track record of adoption. And so I think you need to look at what kind of bet are you asking the capital markets to take, and then where do you stand on the spectrum? Are you addressing, if it's a technology risk, big markets? If it's an adoption risk, do you have a history so that we can tell that you're about to take off? And I think it's that's the challenge, and that's what the capital markets struggle with. And if you're in that zone where you're asking them to take two bets, that will be a problem.
I'd like to take an example. Let's take Tesla Motors, out of California. People who are buying those cars are people who can actually afford 100,000 plus cars, mostly the rich and the famous people. But to gain critical mass, you have to have something like Chevy Volt come and build massive cars for a common person. I think it's still years ahead. So how do you think you can address this particular problem?
Yeah, I think when you look at how do you get energy for the masses, that's something that people address. I mean, when you look at there's a number of people who've taken on the electric vehicle at a different. It's about getting to scale. So to be able to get low cost, you have to produce a lot of vehicles. And so one way to get to scale is to approach a large number of people that for example, fleets. We see a lot of electric vehicle companies going after the fleet market. So I can go to a FedEx or a UPS or someone like that. And so I think we're going to have to see some transition there. I think the Tesla strategy, which others have emulated, works as well because it gets the business going. And you know that, listen, I'm addressing a market that will allow me to get to scale. And then as I get bigger in scale, I can move down market and be able to really drive it. So it's, in all these businesses, it's about scale and what's the quickest path to get to scale. And that's how we're going to be able to deliver these products to as many people as possible. And I think there's different strategies to get to scale. Tesla has one strategy, others have a different strategy. I think they're all striving for the same thing. I need to be able to mass produce to get economies of scale and drive down the production. And so there's different paths to get there, but ultimately I think they're all working to provide the lowest cost alternative to the problem they're trying to solve.
Finally, I want to get advice from you for those entrepreneurs who are small scale, who are helping support the whole clean technology spectrum. People who are helping build better inverters, et cetera, et cetera. So their hope is, someday we'll get enough critical mass so we could sell it to the bigger one and the bigger one. So what is your advice to them for, their acquisition plans? Sure.
Listen, I think the best part of my job is every day someone comes in with a new idea. And that's why I enjoy, as much as doing good is important, working with entrepreneurs who are engaged and driving change is an incredible part of what I get to do. I think entrepreneurs need to be thoughtful about capital and how much capital do they need to get from milestone to milestone. And I think a lot of people will spend a lot of time thinking about over-engineering. Do I take a little bit more dilution and can I avoid that? I think getting as much capital to allow you to ride it through. Where people have problems is they get a little bit cute with trying to save some on valuation or avoid some dilution. And when they do that, they don't take as much capital as they should. And then when they run into a problem is when they don't have capital. And I think nothing is harder for a company to do that has taken its technology to a point and then run out of capital and then go try to raise capital. Because I think that's when people, listen, they're dealing with on the other side of this equation, you have entrepreneurs on one side and you have capitalists on the other. And I think they sense opportunity. So I would tell you, I think that the important thing is to be thoughtful about your capital plan, be really critical as you look at it, and then also make sure you're building in cushion to be able to ride that through, because where you're going to get in trouble, the best ideas may never make it to market because of a lack of capital and not having thought that through.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.